I did.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the April 16th, 2013 Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting. 7:03, I'm calling the meeting to order. My name is Maurice Whiteman, I'm the chair of the planning board. Our members present this evening are Elizabeth Harshaw, Tom Rocco, Rich Steffens, and Michael Zerler. Our secretary is Kelly Stengel, and our planner, director of planning, is Kurt Lavala. We have an agenda with continuation of the public hearing for a special use permit and site plan for change of use, PB 13001 for Moxie Cupcake at 184 Main Street. Another public hearing for PB 12010, a cafe at 17 Church Street, public hearing, special use permit, site plan review for change of use. And we have a referral from the village board for recommendation of planning board regarding proposed zoning definitions and special use permit process items. There's also an item on the agenda to adopt draft planning board meeting minutes, but that's not going to happen this evening. I haven't gotten to do that yet. Sorry. Everybody's upset. So, we have the, I don't think we have to open this since it's not been closed. Is anybody here to speak to the public hearing for Moxie Cupcake? Guess not. Okay. Give me one moment, please. Sorry for the delay. I was expecting there to be at least somebody here, but I'll be right with you. Okay. Since there's nobody here for this public hearing for Moxie Cupcake, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the public hearing and suspend processing of the application until the escrow balance has been replenished according to our notice that was sent to the applicant via certified mail on March 13th, 2013. The funds need to be deposited by our normal deadline of 2 weeks before the meeting at which the applicant would like to resume processing of the application. So I'd like a second, and then we can discuss this.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
This is just for point of information. This is a different motion from just closing public hearing. This is adjourning the public hearing?
Yes, sir. If we were to close the public hearing, we would be limited to having to act in 62 days. And if we did not act in 62 days, then we would have a default acceptance of the application. And there is no way that we could act in, we don't have enough information to act to deny the application since we haven't finished processing it yet. And we can't deny the application because they haven't paid their escrow. So this is the only way that that we can do this legally to protect the village and allow the applicant to resume anytime they're ready to do so. If we, well, that's pretty much it. Closing it means that we box ourselves in because the applicant could not do anything for 62 days and then that's it. And we can't do anything to stop that. So that's why I'm moving to adjourn it.
So is adjournment is it equivalent to closing with this caveat? Or do we subsequently then have to, I don't understand the difference between adjournment, closing, and.
Well, closing means we're done with it.
I understand what closing
Adjourning means
is.
we're just not gonna, we're done for tonight, and we aren't rescheduling anything because there doesn't seem to be any reason to at this point.
Okay.
If they pay the escrow, if it allows us to continue to process it, we can reopen it if need be, or if we don't think we need it anymore, then we can just go to process the application.
Okay.
It's not a
We'll
matter,
have to
it's
close.
not a matter of reopening, it's open.
Yes, that's right.
All right, so we still have to formally close it or continue it. We have to take an act. I mean, if we want to proceed, at some point we actually have to.
That's right.
Okay. Just want to, and how much money are we asking them?
Well, we've asked for $1,600 for the, to replenish the escrow.
And that is the escrow in fact has no money in it, or it has?
The escrow, here's the difference between the way we say the escrow. I don't believe any bills have been paid,
Okay,
so that the escrow has $3,000,
okay,
which is how much they have paid into it. We have indebted the village by hiring consultants to process this to the tune of $3,900
right,
so far, approximately.
right,
So that means that the account is in arrears for what we have obligated ourselves for, what we have obligated the village for, by $900.
right,
And the $700 above the 900 to make it the 1,600 is to continue to process the application, to have our engineer and attorney evaluate the last submission, and to be here for the final, what we would hope to be the final meeting of the processing the application. Then we can vote to approve it, or some reason disapprove it. And again, this is a deposit. It's not like this is gone money. We may not have to spend all that money. It may take only an hour of the engineer's time, or whatever that is, and he might be happy with everything. I don't know, but there are enough problems with this, including the driveway that needs to be remediated, and there are other issues that were brought up that we need to have the attorney and the engineer tell us we're okay.
May I ask one more,
Yes.
like, point of information? Was the site plan dated 3/6/13, the last site plan?
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
the adjournment is fine based on what you read. It sounds like they would need to pay some sum of money in order to allow us to continue. As I said 2 weeks ago, I disagree with the dollar amount, and I believe that they should pay what is owed. I still stand by what I said before. I don't think that there are sufficient problems with this application that we need to engage an engineer and possibly not an attorney any further for the issues that directly relate to this application. I acknowledge there are concerns about the property that need to be dealt with, but I believe those are a responsibility between the property owner and the Village of New Paltz, and should not prevent this particular application from being processed by the planning board and the decision being rendered. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I have a,
Yes.
I guess you could call it a comment, possibly a question. It's my understanding, after the last meeting and a couple of other conversations or emails, that Moxie Cupcake is also representing the landowner. Am I mistaken?
I don't think they're representing the landowner. I think the landowner hasn't played an active role in our.
Or they
Yeah.
they had somehow signed made an agreement that they were going to be there in his or her stead.
Well, actually,
Am I mistaken in that?
the only thing I'm aware of is in the case of every application to the planning board or zoning board, if you're not the owner of the property, you would need to seek the owner's signature to bring the application forward. And in this case, of course, there are issues that predate this current lease. And of course, those things have had a bearing on the previously approved site plan and the currently proposed site plan, which would diminish some of those features or alter some of those features. But the only requirement I can think of is the one that a tenant or contract vendee has the owner sign, so that we know that it's an authorized application.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So that we have a motion and a second. Who would like to vote yes on this motion, please?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
No.
Okay, so 4 ayes and 1 no. Okay. So the motion passes. The public hearing is adjourned, and we will suspend further processing of the application until the escrow has been replenished. Okay, so I think we're done with that. Let me see if George is coming. Hi, George. It's Maurice. Are you somewhere nearby? Are you coming over? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're ready. Thank you. Bye. Okay, he's just about here. Okay, so our next item is Rich. Gonna clean my screen?
Huh?
You gonna clean my screen?
No, as you know.
The next item on the agenda is PB 12010, Cafe at 17 Church Street. Mr. Gordon, and so I have, yes, pull up a chair, come on up, please. So, we should probably wait for our attorney to get here, but just to bring everybody up to date, I think. We had, I'm sorry that I don't remember exactly what date you were here, but it was about a month or so ago. And we had a question about the Historic Preservation Committee, since you wanted to make a change to the sign. I believe they have said that it's okay, that they agree with the look of the sign and the placement, and it's not going to impact them. So that hurdle is passed. We have also, here's George, good. We have also referred your application to the county, and they said that there is no county impact, so that's not an issue. So tonight we're going to have the public hearing for your application. So may I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Move that we open the public hearing on this application.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, Mr. Gordon, would you like to just inform the public assembled here and the millions watching on television?
Well, I'm proposing to open a small cafe at 17 Church Street. It has a small...
Mr. Gordon, may I ask
Yes.
you to come up to the table, bring your chair up to here so the microphone can
Pick it
pick
up.
you up? Yeah,
Okay.
it wrongs up. Thank you.
So I'm proposing to open a small cafe at 17 Church Street. It has a small patio. The menu going to be consisting of dumplings, sandwiches, salads. It's going to have 2 people as of now working in it. The food is going to be fairly inexpensive, and I believe it's the kind of enterprise that New Paltz has in its...
Sorry, did you say inexpensive or expensive?
Inexpensive.
Okay. I mean, just a subtle difference, but yeah.
No reservation
Okay,
necessary.
thank you.
And I believe it's the kind of, small enterprise that is in the downtown section of Newport's.
Right. Okay. And as of now, you have how many seats proposed for this?
I believe that I had 20 seats. I believe there were 7 parking spots or so, 6 to 7
That were
parking
required,
spots
right,
that were the question.
right. Okay. And so, without the benefit of a parking study done by an expensive entity, I should open the public hearing. We are open. Anybody in the public would like to speak to this application? Yes, sir.
I'm a local resident and I'm acquainted with the idea of the cafe. I look forward to it. It's the kind of cuisine that I enjoy
Now,
personally.
you said inexpensive. You can't use a word like cuisine. Can I ask you also to just state your name?
Jay Schubert.
Okay, Jay.
I live in proximity of town.
Okay.
And I'm acquainted with Jack. And I know him to be a man of integrity and look forward to the enterprise. I think it'll be worthwhile for the town. The dumplings is an item that's going to bring some diversity to the menus around town, and I look forward to it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Tom Goldowski, and I'm one of the owners of Manny's Art Supplies.
Yes,
Pertaining to the parking,
yes.
could you explain to me what the public parking lot was?
Well, we'll talk about that after we close the public hearing. For now, if you have comments to make about it, including talk about the parking, you can do that. But this isn't the time for talking
Oh, I
about it.
thought you, yes.
I'm sorry. What I asked for was comments from the public concerning the merits of the application or
Oh,
problems with it. If you have something to say about parking, you can say that too.
well, I was kind of curious about that, because the lot in the back is my lot that I share with Mr. Beck. And the original dealing on that was so he could put his extension on the building. So it's not, even though we try to use that for customer parking, it doesn't seem to be that way.
Right.
So on the letter I had gotten, I wanted to find out if part of this parking is supposed to be in my lot, which I'm not for.
Okay. Thank you.
We have problems now with this.
I understand. Thank you. Any other comments from public?
I
Yes, sir.
would like to see Jack open that vacant building for a while.
Could you please state your name?
Abdul Jelani, owner of Jack's,
Thank you.
and I had to see, I saw a building not occupied and business not coming to Newport.
Yeah.
But as any part of the town should be always occupied full. Same concern that I have with Tom over here from Manny's is the parking spaces. That it'll create the business and generate business for Jack and for us without, having to burden us on some of us businesses people that for
Yes.
the parking reason.
Understood.
So if there's any comment about a parking then in the end up, we would like to put some inputs into that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, hearing no further comment, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Don't fight.
you got it.
Mr. Zerler seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so parking is something we've talked about and thought about and heard from some members of the public. Mr. Lavala, do you have some?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as a matter of fact, I know the parcels in question. There are 3 parcels. And I just want to call attention to the fact that, first of all, some folks who came in to look at the application mistook this project to be the building that previously housed Naomi's Cafe. This, of course, is the building up front. It's a smaller building, and as as Mr. Gordon mentioned, there are 20 or 21 seats
Right.
and require 7 parking spaces, one for each 3. And the parking that has been mentioned here, and I've also spoken with folks about the parking, is across the street on Church Street, and of course is behind the buildings on Main Street.
Yeah.
So what's being expressed is a concern about a private parking area, which obviously, of course, is a desirable area to park. And I think it's safe to say that it's difficult to for the owners to police it. It
Yeah.
actually has 3 separate owners comprising that area that is used as parking. And at the
Kurt, are
same-
we talking about the dirt lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and of course, that lot, short of being very vigilant to police it, I imagine that there are folks that park there that may not be authorized. I forget what signs may be up. There are signs in some cases. And of course, the owners of the property don't necessarily like to tow cars. I mean, and many of the folks who park there, they may even know. So I certainly understand where the 3 owners of that parking lot comprised by those 3 properties are coming from. I don't believe that this project will have a significant impact. There should be at least some foreboding sign at the entrance where a car might drive in. There should be something to let folks know that that's not public parking. I mean,
Right.
and I know that that's not a cure or a solution. I do realize that. However, the on-street parking is, at least by my observations as a resident of that neighborhood, is that certainly it gets competitive at times, and at other times it's not competitive. And about 254 or 5 feet away, of course, is the small municipal lot behind the bistro in that section of Main Street, where that lot is accessed from Church and from Chestnut. Of course, there's a limited number of spaces there. There may be in the neighborhood of 20 altogether. It's within the 400 feet that we're seeking to change from regulation to a guideline. But in any case, so there is parking. However, it's a very reasonable concern that folks may not endeavor into that municipal lot looking for parking that they may or may not find. But there should be, in general, I see that there are cars parked there that are not affiliated or authorized by the owner, the 3 owners that make up that lot.
Yes.
And perhaps at least some sort of foreboding sign at the entrance saying that this is private parking for specific businesses. And
Right, okay.
I agree with you. I'm in the process now of negotiating some stuff, Mr. Beck and myself, about correcting the situation, because it's gotten to the point where if I don't want to really
Excuse me,
say
Tom.
this, but I'm at a point where I'm almost ready to close this whole thing off because it's become such a headache and a problem. I mean, I used to go to work,
Tom,
semi-retired.
Tom, excuse me for a moment. We're not now entering into a dialogue with, this is just a conversation among the planning board and.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
glad he was part of it.
No, I understand.
in looking over to the folks
Yes.
that made the comments.
Yes, I know.
But
I apologize.
No, that's okay, no problem.
there's no doubt that parking can be competitive, especially on weekends and other popular times. But at least I wanted to clarify that this is approximately 200 square feet with 21 seats and 7 spaces. So at least we know that we're not, for all watching and present, that this is not, of course, a new tenant for Naomi's Cafe.
Right.
It's for the building in front,
Right.
just modest in size.
Okay, so the issue is there's another parallel event going on, which is that we're in the process, the village is in the process of evaluating a suggested change to the code to allow planning board some discretion in in determining parking requirements for an application for use. That's not yet completed. Kirk, would you like to spend a couple of minutes just explaining what that is, or?
Certainly.
It's pretty-
The proposal that originated from the planning board that was forwarded to the village board and is currently under consideration is to essentially make our minimum required off-street parking guidelines rather than...
For commercial use.
That's right, for non-residential uses. We feel that residential is another category that should not be encompassed in this particular recommendation, which, if nothing else, was sought as an interim measure until such time we might do a more formal parking study or even a master plan update where we might yet devise still
Right.
better regulations.
But the implication of that, what I wanted to convey was that as of now, we are pretty much, we have to follow the requirements as enumerated under Schedule C, I think it is,
Yes.
which is where we got the 3 seats per space, or 1 space per every 3 seats, or fraction thereof. So right now we're looking at a hard requirement of 7 seats. We can, I'm sorry, 7 spaces. We can take into account municipal parking within a 400-foot radius. And we've discussed that there is that one lot that is enterable from Chestnut or Front Church.
Church, yeah.
Yes.
On both.
And I'm not sure how many spots there are there, but it's not very many. Maybe 10 or...
I suggested 20.
I think it may be closer
Really?
to 20
Okay.
altogether. There's some along the building, the building housing the bistro itself, and then of course.
Which are not metered, right?
Those are public.
Actually, oh, they're not, aren't those?
No, the only public spaces are the metered spaces.
Okay,
Those are metered spaces.
I thought that there were meters along the way. I see people coming out and putting coins in them.
Okay. That would indicate that it's a metered space.
Okay,
Okay,
well, in any
now,
event,
all right, okay.
Okay, but it's, there is some parking there. There certainly is some parking.
Well, there is some parking, yes, and of course, it's difficult.
And all we have to deal with now is our anecdotal
That's true.
understanding of what
And-
it's
and-
like to find space there.
That's right, and some of what I said isn't anecdotal. Even the fact that I
May be
swore I
wrong, yeah.
remember the meters. I guess I'll be checking when I walk home.
but there are, I mean, there's also a lot of on-street metered parking.
Yes?
On Church Street.
Yep.
And on Front Street. So, I mean,
And-
there's far more than 7 spaces within 400 feet of this building.
I would concur, and also even Chestnut is not a distant walk, especially if you happen to be somewhat familiar
Right.
with the village.
And the thing that we are not now allowed to consider is that perhaps this wouldn't be a destination restaurant, no offense, but people might not be coming from Poughkeepsie and Kingston to come here just to have Jack's dumplings.
Yes, I mean, in other words, I had the same thought that this would be, something that people would happen upon while walking as they do, and that in what I might refer to as the triangle
Yeah.
formed by Front and Chestnut and Church and then Main. So that's what I picture, and again, anecdotal, but there's a lot of visitors that are drawn down Church from Main because of the interesting corridor that it is.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions or comments of the applicant from members of the board?
Just
Mr.
a question
Zerler.
for Jack. The patio seating is seasonal, I assume? Or are you only
Yes.
planning to be open certain months? of the
No,
year?
it's seasonal.
Okay. And so that's actually almost half your seating.
Correct.
And do you have hours that you're considering?
Nothing firm, but I'm thinking something along 10 a.m. lunch into an early evening, let's say, approximately those kind of hours.
Okay.
Will there be alcohol?
What is it?
Alcohol?
No, no alcohol.
No beer, no alcohol.
No.
Ms. Harshel?
I have no questions.
Mr. Rocco?
Nope.
Mr. Stephens?
I'm just so happy to meet the parking zone.
Okay, so let's talk about parking. Michael brought up the point that there is metered parking, that is, there are meters there on the streets. Whether it's available or not is subject to anecdotal testimony. How do we feel about saying that there is enough parking or there isn't enough and it might require variance from the CBA?
Well, I think it's really a good thing that we're not going to go and try to count parking places just to prove this is going to work. Because I really do believe that in that downtown, especially that downtown area, approving or denying a business based on parking is not something we should be discussing or wasting our time with. We have metered street parking, we have municipal parking lots. Luckily, we still have some private parking available. We should be promoting business down there every chance we get and basing it on something as antiquated as how many cars are necessary. It also doesn't take into account the fact that you eat dumplings at Jack's, then you walk up to Dom's, and you walk over to this place, and you walk over to that. How many times do we count that car in what place?
Right.
So, I mean, the town amounts to downtown is a mall. It's a mall. Casey Stengel said nobody goes there anymore because the place is too crowded. I'd like to get that point for our downtown businesses. I'd like to have it be so crowded that nobody goes there anymore.
Yes, and actually, just to add to that, I guess I'm still in a position, and others are in a position of still convincing some visitors that a longer walk with no sidewalks through a suburban mall parking lot is somehow more desirable than a pleasant walk with sidewalks and not being backed over by cars in a village setting. I know that it's more complex than that. That's an oversimplification, so I do realize that. But at the same time, I think that in the end, there's a lot of spaces, and I think most people don't end up returning from their visit, returning home saying, I don't really think we'll go back because we have to walk that. They'll probably enjoy it. I mean, again, there's some speculative thinking.
Okay,
I don't,
yes, Mr. Zero.
to address your question directly, I echo most of what Rich said. I do think, I mean, I would nuance it a little bit. I think the businesses that come in, we have to take on a case-by-case basis with respect to parking. But I do think that the size of this business and its location and the proximity of a number of streets and the municipal lot within the actual 400-foot area and a number of lots that may be just outside that would argue that we wouldn't need a variance for this, that I think there is sufficient parking for the kind of restaurant that you're proposing. My only caveat is that the property owners of the lot that you're referring to are comfortable with this, and perhaps one thing you could do, Jack, is once you open, is to remind people who come in not to park in that lot. That might be helpful initially until people get accustomed to not doing that. And so, I mean, I'm not hearing strong objections that you feel like there's no parking anywhere for this business, but that you're
Well, I think there's plenty of parking.
it's just the specific lot that you wanna make sure.
Yeah,
And-
exactly. No, I
Yeah.
wish them luck and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
so
But I'm saying I didn't want it,
Right, you don't want
the
it to
impression
further.
I got that they were gonna be parking here, and as
Right,
it is, we've got
no, I don't think that was
problems
ever our
with all these,
intention.
rooms being rented out with 16 cars, you know,
I mean,
in one
the planning
house.
board's not authorized to count private parking lots unless you have an agreement with the applicant, so we wouldn't be doing that, and,
Oh, you know, like I said, we don't wanna end up towing a car
Yeah.
that sits there for a while, and be his employees or his customer,
right,
which is not,
right,
wouldn't come back again to his business.
Right.
So really, we have plenty cars now, they park in there, they don't move for weeks.
okay.
And we left notes on nice notes, and they still don't. And you could check the police record, I brought in a few times, and they end up calling them, finding who they are, and move them out of there.
Right,
So, in the meantime, my help, I only got 3 spaces in the back. I don't know how many times and I park near early in the morning, my help afternoon can't pull in there, because somebody else is parking.
Right.
Okay, can we bring it back here for?
So anyway, so I don't think it's necessary to consider it. Thank you.
Jack, can you be more specific in the hours that you will be open? What I would like to do is, I would imagine that the two retail establishments that we're talking here don't really care about after 9 p.m. But still, I would like to know what hour you're thinking of closing each night. How late do you think of staying open?
Well, like most small businesses in Newport, those establishments are open 12, 15 hours, depending even what
What
hours.
time would you want to close every night?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of like 10 p.m., but I don't want to be held to that number because if people will come in, I will stay open longer,
Yes,
obviously.
Okay.
And since I have not been open, it's a little difficult for me, to tell you specific hours, So
Right.
until I'm a little open in the, then I can have firm hours and I can post them. But at this point, I don't want to lock myself out of something that I might regret.
Okay. Does anybody have any conditions that we would like to ask Mr. Gordon if he's willing to accept, or are we okay just the way we've had it so far? Anybody?
We are still waiting for something back on the sign bill still.
No, that's good.
It's back.
Yes, actually,
So-
Mr.
Okay.
The HPC certificate of appropriateness was issued,
Right.
and a public hearing was held as well.
Okay, Mr. Zerl, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve this application, the special use permit and site plan.
Oh, okay, you know what?
We have
I'm sorry.
to do first.
We have to do seeker,
Yep.
and I've got
and you have
the
a-
resolution somewhere
Okay.
here. See if I can find it.
I'll withdraw that.
Thank you, Michael, I appreciate your withdrawal.
Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yes.
How much escrow account do you have in your escrow?
I have $1,000.
You got a site plan and an SUP approved for less than $1,000.
Whatever was requested.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will read this resolution for seeker. I don't have to read any of the whereases, I would really like to do it. Okay. It's hereby resolved by the Village of New Paltz Planning Board that the proposed action is not likely to have a significant adverse environmental impact and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared.
You actually have to go to part 2 of the
I'm
short
sorry,
form.
that's right, I gotta go through all those questions.
Stick your way
Okay.
through those questions.
And I don't have that. Do you have the application, Andy? Where's the? No, I don't have that.
Yes.
Okay, it is here.
It's right here. I'm gonna use this one.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, this action does not exceed any type 1 threshold in NYCRR Part 16.4. The action will not receive coordinated review as provided for unlisted actions. Could the action result in adverse effects associated with the following? Air quality, aesthetic, agricultural, architectural, historic, other natural cultural resources, vegetation or fauna, fish, wildlife, communities' existing plans or goals as officially adopted or changed in use or intensity, growth, subsequent development, long-term, short-term, cumulative other effects not identified above, or other impacts, including changes in either quality or type of energy. I say no to those. Will the project have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Is there likely to be controversy related to the environmental impacts? I'd say no. So we will say that,
Just have to agree to that.
yes, I'm sorry, okay. Does the board agree with my assessment?
Yes.
Okay, do I have to do it in the form of a motion? or-
But that's fine.
Okay, that's good. I'll do the motion. Okay, thank you.
We have to give an official neg deck
Just put it here.
That's coming up.
coming up.
As I said before, therefore, it's hereby resolved by the Village of New Paltz Planning Board that the proposed action is not likely to have significant adverse environmental impact and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. May I have a second to that, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. This says draft, but we'll do that one again. Okay, so now we have a resolution. And this says that it's resolved by the Village of New Paltz Planning Board that the application for site plan and special use permit is hereby approved and the planning board chairman is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approved site plan. May I have a second for this, please?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Harshaw, you said aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jack, I think we're done.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to some dumplings. So can you send, is it easier to do this without the driver? Yes,
Because she
So-
takes it off.
so she can, okay. May I give these to you, please? Thank you.
You have that, Kelly? I emailed that to you before. You should.
I can email it to you again. It was copied,
You just take
but
the
I'll
draft
go.
off so you
Yeah.
can sign it.
Okay. So the final item for this evening is the referral from the village board for recommendation of planning board regarding proposed zoning definitions and special use permits. We have all seen the comments that our attorney has prepared for this, and I'd like to know if there are any items that we'd like to discuss this evening. I think we've indicated individually by email that we agreed with them, but I want to hear from everybody.
Tom had his bar issue.
Yeah, there was, I
I
don't
think that was
have,
done.
it's done?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where, what I did was I changed the first thing to say, establishment licensed by New York State Liquor Authority to allow on-premises consumption of liquor, which, and then any of these four makes it a bar.
Any of these or all of those?
Any of those.
Any of those.
That's, it's separated by commas and an or at the end. Am I stating that correctly, Mr. George?
Yeah, it was just, the other way to do it, was to leave it the way it is, that at force, it commits patrons to obtain liquor for on-premises consumption without the assistance of waiter or waitress. Otherwise,
Is this the one that I changed and sent back to you?
I guess so, but otherwise, 1, 2, 3 all have on-premises consumption in their definition, and that hasn't changed. And then 4 didn't have it, it should have had it. It should say.
But they all have
So you can take it out.
on-premises here.
So you take it out of each one of them?
Well, you could take it out of each, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have them in there, but it's...
I don't know if my question is answered.
Okay,
It looks to me, again, on reading this, that one could say, what is a bar? It's an establishment licensed by the New York State Liquor Authority to allow on-premises consumption of liquor, which permits patrons to obtain liquor without the assistance of a waiter or waitress.
well,
This sounds
but
to
it
me
says... Yes, go ahead.
like a liquor store is a bar.
You can't consume on premises that are
You
liquor
can't
stores.
consume.
They don't have a license for that.
Punto. Thank you.
I think the on-premises consumption distinguishes them from everything else. And,
Right.
and,
I
and
agree.
I think these 4 categories
I agree.
that the village board came up with are very good categories. It's just, I just think you have to do one or the other. Either say up front that for on-premises consumption and then take it out of the other ones.
Okay,
I agree.
I should add that at last week's village board meeting, there was some discussion about this, and there was, one of the trustees had suggested that, that I, in addition, try to formulate something which would describe when food service ends and how long liquor service goes on.
That's state law. I believe that's part of the SLA requirement for,
It serves some food, right?
that the restaurant, the food has to be served, and I think it's a modest amount. The menu is very modest, that
Well,
has to be available. And
I
it,
think
and
they-
it says, yes, go ahead.
I think the village board had that history too. I think what they were saying was at such time that and this gets, again, we're starting to get to split hairs, but I was gonna say the actual menu, not just those things required by the state liquor authority
Okay.
to go along with the alcohol in your system, but rather the actual menu, which it splits a few hairs because.
Well, we're saying that the full menu has to be available until they close.
Or at least that's how you determine whether a place is a bar or a restaurant. Again, I was left with the task of
Okay,
researching this a little bit, and I still have that to do. But that
Okay.
I thought a constructive.
well, I'm
discussion.
comfortable with that. That sounds good. Anybody else like to weigh in on that? Okay, so George, what we were gonna do was add on premises to item 4.
I think that's the easiest way, yeah.
Okay,
And then, I think what you're saying, Kurt, I understand it, is that, not the way you expressed it, but it is hard to sort of get it here, is that keep the area primarily devoted to the service and on-premises consumption of liquor open for business after the full menu after they stop serving the full menu of food?
Yes, and actually, I do have some more information downstairs that could help me be as specific as I can be at this point.
or can we make it a 5th item that says that a bar is a place that the full menu is not offered during all open hours?
That's what I'd like to strive to do, because I think that the work that was done here contributes to better administration of our zoning.
Yeah, that's fine.
And yes, if it could be
Yeah,
a
that's
fifth
fine.
element, then.
Yeah, the way this is that the rest of the establishment is closed, but there's another category where they're open, but they're not serving the full menu.
Yeah, they can have popcorn.
Right, or they're, yes, actually, that's right. In other words, not that the minimum set by the state liquor authority,
Right.
which is important.
Now, you should know that the state liquor authority may trump our code. They may say that, that's very nice, but you can't do that.
That's
But
right.
I'm perfectly willing to have it in there. I think it's fine. It's an expression of what we want.
Yes.
But isn't the purpose to distinguish between a restaurant and a bar, not to tell them what they have to do?
Well, yes, but we are telling them what they have to do if they want to get a special use permit for a place that may be considered a bar or a restaurant. And if they don't operate this way by having the full menu every hour they're open, we're considering it a bar.
Right.
And the state liquor authority may say, you don't get to say that. Our law trumps yours, and our law says you
Okay.
have to have some items. But I'm perfectly happy to say
Let's
it.
give it a go.
Can't hurt.
So for all the years I've had to deal with the state liquor authority, they were almost always recognizing municipalities being more restrictive than them, but never less.
No, that's not the case with certain things like hours of operation. They say that they will tell the bar when they have to close, not the municipality, unless the special use permit is granted, or the comments that the village board would make to the state liquor authority include a prohibition of staying open beyond a certain time. If that is done before they actually grant the license, which is during the comment period that the village board has, then it's okay. Then we can say you have to close at 11 o'clock.
Like you're saying, on an individual basis.
Right.
Yes,
I mean, the town could decide to go drive, God forbid.
maybe they can.
At least.
We have towns in Ulster County that are.
Yes, yeah, towns.
I see, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought it
We
was.
go to Granville, you can't get a beer in Granville.
Anyhow, let's just do what we can do here. So,
There is a way to solve this. I think the third category was where the area for liquor stays open after the rest of the establishment is closed. But the one you suggested is after the full menu is no longer served, takes care of that, because closed is also where there's no full menu.
I'm
So
not
you
sure
could
about
change
that. I'm not sure about that.
Or at least the intent.
I think I would
forces-
like to have both.
Well, I was gonna say, let's just try it out, keep the area
Yes.
for liquor open for business after the full menu is no longer served and the rest of the establishment, which means it's either closed or it's open.
Or the rest of the establishment is closed,
Okay, well,
right?
then
Well,
definitely not
yes, and
serving the full
again,
menu.
this is, again, the village board, of course, was having this discussion, trying to make the definitions, in other words,
Tighten it up,
to
yeah.
place these establishments in different types,
Yeah,
into different
I think
types of
that's great.
boxes, you know.
I think that's great.
Okay.
And again, I'm sorry that I don't, if I had the instructions and my notes from last week, I could have been a little bit more specific, and I apologize that.
I accept your apology as the royal I.
I also accept your apology, but I want to make sure that we have a discriminating criterion between bar and restaurant. I want to make sure I know if we have a bar, that it's a bar.
Well, these are the things that we say make it a bar. These 4 or 5 things, if we add the last thought as a separate
Any
item.
one of these
Any one
in
of those,
addition
in addition to
to-
on
on
premises consumption of
consumption
liquor.
on premises.
Right, that's how I read it. Is that the legal way of interpreting that? Yes.
I will be happy if this works.
Yes, well, again, you know, what we're doing, and what we've been doing for long before I came to the village, was at every level, whether it be the planning board, zoning board, or village board, is to try to do something that also affects behavior, conduct in public after leaving these establishments. That's really where we're at, and also what occurs after. It could be a fine dining establishment, and then at a certain time, an amplified band may start playing,
Yes.
and in some places that goes off without a hitch, which and then it's in other places, especially those near residential districts, it doesn't,
Problem,
understandably. So what you have, it still remains elusive, but if there was adherence to those standards for conduct in public, and if there was heavy enforcement of it, and I think that
It's a little too
that's what we're-
hypothetical.
yeah, well, I mean, we're trying to do something that I think we're limited in our powers if we don't have, generally speaking, have order, especially especially in a state where the bars close at 4 a.m.,
Yes,
which is not the case in an awful lot of states
right.
Or the counties.
or the counties.
So what
Okay.
I've got here is that we're putting for on-premises consumption of liquor in the first part. An establishment licensed by New York State Liquor Authority for on-premises consumption of liquor, which, and then you go through each of those 4 and leave it in on-premises, repeat it so it's clear. It's primarily devoted to the service and on-premises consumption of liquor. Can't really take it out of there. Has more than 1 seat in the area, et cetera, et cetera.
But let's,
And then add in the one for full menu is no longer served in the rest of the establishment, and keep in the rest of the establishment is closed. So you end up with 5 categories.
right,
It works.
okay.
I think that's really clear, Tom.
I'm satisfied.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I have a question.
yes, Lou.
Going with the draft of this, if anyone thought that a restaurant was then acting as a bar, which is, I guess, the main concern, because most people aren't going to worry about whether it's a bar acting like a restaurant. Who has to verify that? Who verifies that?
I'm afraid by process of elimination, it's my office. There's no other, while noise complaints should be at the time reported to the police, and then would help my office enforce it. That would be helpful. Although I understand that many residents have called the police routinely and may not want to wear the dispatcher out and calling. I understand that.
Yeah, that's, well, okay.
Well,
I don't like that at all. I think they have to wear the dispatcher out. I
Yes.
think if there's an infraction, they have to report it.
Well,
That's what the dispatcher's there for.
yes,
Well,
I was-
my point in asking that question is, we would then have to have a building inspector who can be called out at
Well, here's,
11 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning.
unless, if
to
it
say,
is, if it's
yes,
a noise complaint,
No, I'm saying the
Well-
difference between a bar and a restaurant,
No, well,
regardless of noise.
well, okay, I see what you mean about firsthand observation, and obviously that, the best thing in code enforcement is firsthand observation by the code enforcement officer. However, a record of a call or calls to the police regarding noise, their response, their,
I'm not saying noise, I'm saying the
that the
the
menu's
definition
closed.
between a bar and a restaurant
yes,
has nothing to
actually,
do with noise,
yeah.
right?
Right.
So how do we get official verification that, okay, this establishment says we are a restaurant, but then it morphs into a bar?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about,
So who has to check on that to give the official say that yes, they are acting like a bar even though they shouldn't?
it's my department. There's no other place for that responsibility to reside, but I must admit, yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about about the viability of enforcement, but I will pursue the path that this board, in advising the village board with these definitions and other initiatives, I'll take whatever route I'm given by the decision makers and work as best as we can with it.
Well, Kurt, we've had a long-standing problem with enforcement because our zoning code enforcement officers don't work after 4 o'clock.
Well, actually, in other communities they don't. Ours do. And again, they're coming in. They're called. Actually, I'm surprised that they were available at that time of the evening. I mean, again, we don't. They're not on call technically. There's sometimes when you're on call, there's actually a provision for that in the description of your position. In this case, we just happen to have had a code enforcement officer who was generally available, whether it be a fire, whether it be a noise complaint, whether it be a confrontation, over enforcing a special permit. That's unusual.
Right.
And I don't know if that's, if we
Okay,
can take that
so-
at face value, but it's unusual.
Fine, so, but to follow on Liz's hypothetical, let's say it's 11 o'clock at night and the place that was a restaurant at 8 o'clock now is acting like a bar.
Yeah.
That the dining area is closed, there are 150 people standing in the bar area, and, let's say it's not noisy, they can't call the police, but how do they get someone to witness this who can make this work?
Yes, well, code enforcement can also work by affidavit. It could be, and this could be with, it could be a complaint regarding residential neighbors, commercial neighbors, any type of uses. So the process can work, and Georgia, please let me know if you, it can work through affidavits. It starts to get extremely cumbersome, and here we have an issue that we know that very capable minds have been at work on this issue of distinguishing and making sure that establishments maintain their defined use
Right.
designation, and I guess we're still not there yet.
Right.
So I went by at 3 o'clock last night and nobody was eating.
No, that's not a criterion.
That would not be enough.
Food.
Nobody. Well,
That's not a criterion, it has to be
did you
on,
go in and order
it
anything?
has to be a menu that you could go in at 3 o'clock and say,
Yeah, just because they're not eating doesn't mean it's not available.
You're gonna have to go out for a lot of late night snacks. No, you're right, but this is a.
You know, how are you gonna know that unless you go in and order?
Exactly.
that's the way, yeah. If a business can be documented to be operating in a way that does not have that, or that has a different menu with only liquid things in it, or whatever those things are, then that's that. But,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
if you'll permit me, I'm gonna go out on a limb a little bit and say that the externalities are what bring attention, whether it be calls to the police or
Yes.
complaints after the weekend to my office.
Right.
It's the externalities. A place that not only conducts itself in a way that's in harmony, but also its patrons,
Yeah.
which they obviously may not have, certainly not full control of.
Right.
But that's what's at stake here. In other words, it's the externalities.
Yeah.
How many people are gathered in front of the establishment? How many people? What type of noise is being made? Is there a ban? So in many cases, that's really what we're looking at. There are places that could not conform to the fifth component that I suggested after discussing with the village board last
Right.
week, where it would be almost irrelevant. It would be, so to speak, like the tree falling in the forest when no one's there to hear it. If they simply are, if the patrons and the proprietors are conducting themselves in a way where people don't feel,
You don't notice them.
that they need to blow off so much steam that it's imposing on the rights of others.
Right.
And
that's true.
this goes for, and this is not only with regard to underage drinking, it's with regard to full-grown adults.
Yeah.
Well put. So what that means is that these externalities will bring you there, and it will be obvious whether it's a bar or not a bar at that point, using these criteria. But what's happening at 3 in the afternoon, when everybody's quiet and there's no commotion, doesn't really matter.
Right.
That's true, yes, it's the later
We're
hours.
not going to waste time looking at that because there's no problem. So I think the big problem for the village is that there have been prior approvals that include bar. So we're distinguishing bar from restaurant, and yet, for example, 127 was approved for a bar and a restaurant. And that's probably a mistake that was made in the way it was phrased. And if you go through the intention, that wasn't the intention of the board. It was supposed to be a restaurant,
Right.
clearly, but bad language like bar got in there because there's a structure where you can sit at it and drink, and that's a bar. But bar also in this text is a very different animal. It's a bar without a restaurant.
It's about business.
So we have these approvals in the past that are going to continue to be a problem, even though we have great definitions. The approvals were very mixed. Going forward, we'll have restaurants approved, and if the restaurant is serving at a service bar liquor that the waiters go and get liquor from, that's a restaurant. Clearly, it's not a bar. So I think in the future, this has all led the planning board to be educated in the fact that you don't approve a bar and a restaurant, you approve either a bar or a restaurant.
Right. Well, that's what the code says.
Yeah,
Only one
because they're
use.
very different things.
Yes.
And also, we even have some establishments open now that have been classified as something like indoor recreation.
Yes,
Or
right.
a
Yeah,
cabaret
that's
or
right.
something like that. So
Indoor
now we're
recreation.
moving away from those additional and troublesome definitions. I don't think we're gonna be issuing permits under those defined categories any longer.
Right.
Hopefully that will help a little bit too.
But in the case, Kurt, of a restaurant
Yes.
that suddenly, 3 years after they've been open and approved, starts operating because some group of people discover it and just start drinking a lot there, and maybe leave drunk and make a lot of noise in a place that was okay as a restaurant because they're usually out of there by 10, let's say. But now it's 2 or 3 or 4, and they leave and they make noise in this restaurant, in this residential area. That's something that that our definition should be able to prevent from happening.
I think it is a major step forward.
Right. And if anybody has any suggestions for making it a complete step forward, I would like to hear them. I mean, if there is anything else we can say or add or suggest, it doesn't mean that we're done with this. I mean, we can, if we come up with something that's much better in a year, I'm sure we can modify it, but I'd like to be able to do it now.
Well, my question was just, if it is if it is after 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, after normal business hours, would we, as a village, have someone to officially look into it? Or are we SOL after 5? And if we are, then
Okay, as far as sorry.
So historically, these are, unlike a noise issue, for instance.
I'm not
I know, I
talking
said
about-
unlike one. These are issues that would, if it only happened once and never happened again, it probably wouldn't matter to residents. These tend to be ongoing because, and historically what's happened in the building department has been that when these complaints come forward, they then make us, they won't necessarily come out the day you register the complaint, because that's, the incident's already happened, you file a complaint, they then make, they make it their business to then go out over perhaps multiple times after the complaint, in appropriate hours to verify or determine whether or not this is an ongoing problem. That's historically what's happened, and that's what you were referring to. Not that, I mean, the previous building inspector would actually, if there was a fire or something like that, she would get up in the middle of the night and come in. On these situations, she would then make it her job to go out at whatever hour of the evening and try to verify what it was that the complaint was about.
She did, and even before my time, I would not put my code enforcement officer in a situation late at night where he or she was alone. I'd be a little bit wary about that. Okay, our code enforcement officer is not a law enforcement officer.
Do you pack heat?
They often went with a police officer.
Yes. That's again. It's okay. It's just that we obviously don't have in our job descriptions for this title that you better be close by and you better not go out at night or not be able to.
But will it be in the job description that there might, or there would be times when the code enforcement officer was required to do work outside of normal business
actually,
hours?
That's in there, and there is an overtime budget line for that work.
You know what, I wonder, Kurt, if, and Liz, if there's an infraction that's noticed by a nearby resident of a restaurant that is acting like a bar, can we just say that we're not gonna call the zoning code enforcement officer that night at 11:12, but we will authorize that person to visit the establishment on a similar hour, weekend, let's say, the next week or the weekend after that, or both, just to see if they're doing it okay, so that they can be more proactive with it.
Yes, and that's one of the things we did as recently as Monday, yesterday, this week, after this weekend, in one case, because of course I understand that many residents have been living in a state where they can't really rely on an establishment to keep its character that it may have started with. I wish I could offer more.
Yeah, and also the affidavit part is interesting to me. If it can be as effective as the testimony of a sworn officer who would witness it, and I'm uncertain about that.
Right. Now, and of course, in the cases where we think we might be really needing all the effort that's gone into our definitions and our enforcement policies, those are probably going to be repeat offenders,
Right.
Rather than
I think
an
that's right.
isolated sort of incident.
If it happened just once.
Yeah, I mean, again, because I'm speaking of this, I'm very cognizant of the fact that whoever wishes to tune into this meeting live or thereafter is going to hear this, and obviously I understand that New Paltz is a popular gathering place. These establishments, it's just a matter of the management and the patrons maintaining some level of decorum. I mean,
Right.
I know that's not really planning. I'm going outside of planning a little bit right now, but it's an issue.
Right. Yes, Liz?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other comments about the bar definition? So, what we're saying is, we're adding the words on-premises consumption of liquor to item 4.
Right, and also up top as an introductory phrase.
That
I think it's just up here. Oh, yeah, you had it already, okay. I don't have your version.
Okay. And then we have the sentence about the full menu offered during all hours. And that goes in item 3, or it's a separate item?
I think it's a separate item. I'm going to
Okay.
keep item 3, which is that they
Primary.
serve liquor after the rest of the establishment is closed.
Okay, so
So we keep that.
should we move 4 to item 5 and
Yeah.
add that as 4? Okay, so that becomes 5, and 4 is, did you read that?
Keeps, well, what is now 3? Keeps the area primarily devoted to service on on-premises consumption of liquor open for business after the rest of the establishment is closed. And the other one was very similar, keeps the area primarily devoted to the service and on-premises consumption of liquor open for business after the full menu is no longer served in the rest of the establishment.
Right. You have that, Kelly?
I think so.
Okay. And item 4 becomes 5, okay.
And it says permits patrons to obtain liquor for the on-premises consumption of liquor without the assistance of a waiter or waitress.
Right. So we add, okay.
I mean, I understand that, for example, on certain holidays, St. Patrick's Day might be a good example, that there might be quite a number of restaurants that for that one night act like a bar.
Yes, and I
But
think,
the rest of the year, they're really a restaurant.
right. I mean, I understand, and it's made clear to me that there's an awful lot of very patient residents and out there, and it's only when it becomes fairly chronic that it really is impossible to disregard and ignore.
Okay, so can we move on from the bar item? Okay. Any comments on any of the other items that we haven't already discussed? Mr. Zerler?
No, it's fine.
Mr. Steffens?
I'm still confused on the height one. When you don't define the height of a building,
Yes?
'cause I personally get trouble with this one all the time. I always took height of the building as the average grade
Yeah.
to the highest point.
Mm-hmm.
What is this definition doing to that?
So definition as,
I can't find the change. I mean, this is a different point. This is where it says the average highest point, which is not,
Average highest point, yeah,
Doesn't make
no
any
idea what it is.
you either have the highest point or an average, but I think that was the highest point. And then it should be the average between the elevations of the base, the first floor level, or the soil level, at the front and the back, or the lowest and the highest points. Take that average and then measure to the height of the building.
Like the average grade,
And
right?
that's typical.
Right.
You take the average base elevation, measure to the highest point. Good. Did you agree, Kurt?
Yeah,
And I can't remember what, there was some,
Now, the other thing we went on to expand, and I don't know where this covers in this, is it
at the height.
prohibits me from raising the grade against the building
Right.
in order to.
I've seen
You know what I'm talking
definitions. Yes, I've
I
seen
mean, a
definitions.
retaining wall grade.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, obviously, yeah, you lose the ability to have windows below that grade. Oh, I see what you mean, the retaining wall, okay, grades. Yes, and that's why you see a number of different definitions from municipality to municipality rather than anything truly standard, although I think what you said, Rich, is the most common one.
okay, where are we in, it's under building?
Height. Well, it's under height. Well, building is not an issue.
But that's where, oh, so there's a second one for height, right, I'm sorry.
There are no big problems with language other than make the comment and let Joe redesign it. Right. Like to
Yeah, I
say,
thought that's what we
It's just
did.
average height of highest point. There is no average of a highest.
right. That's
Is it the highest or it's average?
But in height, you said between
The
the
average tallest person.
upgrade plane and the Okay, so he takes the height from, or this draft takes the height from the highest point of the highest point
To the average
of, no,
grade.
vertical distance from the grade plane, that's grade
And it might be grade, average height of the grade plane, no?
to the average height of the highest point, but
No, not, what I'm saying is if average height referred to grade plane and not
Yeah.
highest point.
But is grade plane defined up there?
Yes.
Yeah. So grade plane is the average of finished ground level adjoining the building at existing walls. So that's right.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then where finished ground levels away from exterior, the reference plane can be established by the lowest points of the area between the building and the lot line where the lot line is 1 and 6 feet from the building, between the building and the flat. It's complicated, but it's still an average plane of the highest and lowest base elevation. So I think that's the best we can do. That's pretty standard.
Right.
So
That's
the-
what's thrown up on
So the
this.
question is, in,
Yeah, but that I think needs to be changed.
should we say that we're talking about the average height of the grade plane?
That's already defined.
Yes.
Grade plane is an average of the
Okay.
highest and lowest. So it should just say to the
So,
highest point.
so to the average height should be out.
Yeah.
or
From the grade plane to
the average
the
height
highest
of
point
should be out.
of the building or structure, including the chimney, et cetera.
Okay.
Just the highest point.
Right.
One more thing, I think.
Average height should be deleted, yeah, that's what, that's it. So that says the average height should be deleted. So does that not answer your concern?
Yeah.
The average height, okay. So are there any other comments or concerns about this document?
I think the special use provisions are pretty interesting, and they could just use a little cleanup along the comments here, but it would definitely give this planning board the authority it needs to address some of the issues that were raised before this. It did not have the authority to do, and I'll tell you that this concept of continuing jurisdiction is something that's never been addressed in court, in any decisions that have tried to understand this. And as far as I know, practicing in a lot of planning boards, I've never seen anybody use it. It's a planning board. And so this is the first time I've ever seen a municipality attempt to define this and actually make it work. So I don't have any significant comment about it, but I think a couple things like public hearing, getting it to come back to the planning board if the ZBA rules on it, all those are important. It
You know,
should be added in.
It makes us feel better, or it makes me feel better as planning board that we can go through all this effort of coming up with conditions.
Right.
And then it's gone. It doesn't happen anymore. So now if we can say we find that these conditions are not being met, and we will either withdraw our approval or whatever it is, then we have some teeth, and that's.
I think the thing.
But this isn't putting us into a policing powers, right?
Well, no, it's not, and that's the important point. You have no staff.
Right.
You have no staff at all, and you need to get the cooperation from the building department and from the CEO to bring to you the information you need to document what you're doing, to support you, and there is no direct line between you and the building department. So having Kirk here, having their cooperation is critical to make this work. That's why the planning boards don't really have the ability to do anything in continuing jurisdiction. They don't have anybody to facilitate a violation or to go out and do the enforcement. And all you can do really is modify, if there's a good case made to you, you can modify into this, modify the conditions to clarify them, to get rid of confusion, that sort of thing. Goes to the ZBA, if they will, there is a violation, it should come back to the planning board so you can do the final step, whatever that step is. And that's not in here, because it comes back to you.
Okay, last call. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, I would like to make a motion that we adopt these comments with the changes we've made this evening as our response to the referral from village board for these zoning code amendment changes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that good? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Oh, you gotta do this?
No, you don't have
Did you guys come for something? Did you guys come for something?
No, that was just a slow news night, so we could.
Jeez.
Okay, so excuse me, wait a minute. We have a motion to adjourn. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did Richard make that
Whole
motion?
downtown business.
To close? Yes.
That orders application.
Pass.
We had to approve. I just want to hear what's going on.
Yeah, we, yeah, so